Hello, I'm Nick Fitzpatrick, the editor of Funds Europe. Now, the investment management industry is undergoing significant transformation. Among those challenges are increasing fee pressures, growing regulatory demands, and a rapidly evolving alternatives marketplace. Historically speaking, operating models have been built reactively. That's to say, they expand organically to meet immediate needs. But arguably, these models lack the optimization, innovation, and resilience needed in today's modern market. So to discuss all this, I'm joined by Joe Latini, the Chief Commercial Officer at MUFG Investor Services, an asset servicing firm that's at the forefront of helping fund managers navigate all these complexities. Thank you for joining us, Joe.
Thank you, Nick. I'm really excited for this.
Well, Joe, you say that fund managers are now at a crossroads, needing to scale and innovate without disrupting their operations. So can you tell us a bit about what strategies you're seeing that are proving most effective in achieving this balance?
Well, rather than saying that it's at a crossroads, I would say that it's at an inflection point. It's a really, really interesting time right now. The industry has changed a lot over the past 10, 15 years. If you think back 10 years ago, a lot of times you could see when growth was occurring that managers would either hire more people or they would look at technology, they would invest in technology, but they wouldn't jump in with both feet and really dig in. In essence, they were just using bubblegum and duct tape to fix these problems. And they got to a point where it's a bend but don't break. And so that's where we really get to this inflection point. So the inflection point now brings us to a point where clients are really starting to think about the term outsourcing. And again, 10, 15 years ago, if you think about outsourcing, a lot of times people would hear that and see it as like a four-letter word. But what's happening now is that people are thinking about outsourcing and they're seeing really all these wonderful benefits that come along with it. And so what are the benefits? The benefits are effectiveness, efficiency, and they really allow the managers to go and look at really what they're good at, and that's generation of alpha. So when we think about the next generation operating model and why is it critical, the operating model is going to be different for every manager. There's no single answer there. The answer to this is, what do the managers need to become the most efficient and the most effective in what they're doing? So that means managers have to internally look at all of their processes and say, what makes sense for me to use a partner and what makes sense for me to keep in-house? Then you have to think about, what type of partner do I want? And the partner that most managers are going to want is going to be a partner that can do things really, really well. And of course, everyone's going to say, of course, they're going to do something that they do very well. But it's someone who's going to be someone who invests heavily into technology, who invests heavily into their people, who invests into their location strategy, and who can give you a global footprint and multiple different services that aligned to their needs. When these managers are thinking about the future, they want to think about working with a provider that does a multitude of things. And they want to do a provider who can give them everything across the value chain. So for instance, with us, you can be a fund administration client, you can do fund administration, you can do banking, you can do FX, you can do outsourced middle and back office. We offer a multitude of things that allows our clients to be very nimble. And they can call us and use us and pick up the phone and say, I'm looking to do X, Y, and Z, can you help me with that? And where we can, we absolutely will. When we can't, we'll help them with that too. And we'll tell them, here's a way that you can go and here's a way that you could do this internally.
We all know that asset managers have for many years faced regulatory reporting pressures, particularly around AML or KYC, for example. How are they influencing operating models and what innovations are helping fund managers mitigate the burdens?
Regulatory demands are always going to be here. If you think about it, all of these demands, and they're different regionally, different in different markets. They're there to safeguard. And so while sometimes getting all of that regulatory information and going through the AML, KYC process could be very difficult, it's our job as a provider to make sure that we can make it a little bit easier for the investor and we can streamline things. When you look at the market right now, over time, you see the investor landscape changes, and there's a new generation of investor that has been coming into the market. That new generation has grown up with technology. They've grown up with cell phones. They've grown up differently than the way I grew up. So you really have to understand what they need now. Gone are the days of faxing in information or taking photocopies and sending things over or sending in wet ink signatures and mailing them in. What we're seeing is there's a new generation that's grown up in the digital era. And so you have to figure out a way to digitize this and to make that experience of the investor not so burdensome, but enough that you get all of the information and that you're really doing the full due diligence to make sure that everything is buttoned up and perfect.
So if fund managers are increasingly turning to partners, to trusted partners, what are the key attributes they look for in a service provider to navigate all the complexities that exist in the industry right now?
This is my favorite question of every question that I'm ever asked. And the answer to that is it all comes down to client service. Client service 101. That's how you win relationships. That's how you keep relationships. So when I think about that, I think about when you have a question, you have an issue, and you pick up the phone, do you know who you're going to call? When you send an email, are you sure that it's going to be replied to? And that's something that is near and dear to my heart. It's who I am, it's what I've grown up in, and client service is the core of everything that we do. And when I think about our organization, you have to look at all of the different regions that we're in. You have to look at the culture that you build. And if you build a winning culture, you build a culture where it's client first all the time, that's going to lead to really happy clients. We've spent a lot of effort internally to make sure that we've invested heavily into our people and it's paying dividends. Our attrition rates are super low. Our client retention rates are super high, and our new wins on clients are really quite high in the percentage of wins versus losses. There's a reason for that. We invest heavily back into our business. We invest into technology, yes. We always think of new businesses that we can be in, and we think of new products that we can offer to clients, as I talked about before, making sure that you offer a multitude of things to clients. But at the end of the day, it all comes down to service. And if you are able to provide to your partner exactly what they need and then some, you will always win.
Joe Latini of MUFG Investor Services, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been fun.